Hello there guys, and welcome to the south of France, the place where every car manufacturer seemingly wants to showcase and launch its newest models these days. So today we're in Marseille, and we were told last night that this is the second most dangerous city in Europe. And you might be wondering what we're doing here, since this is a dangerous place. Well, we came here to discover a new car. Well, the name might not be new, but the car itself is completely new. And I'm talking of course about the car I'm driving right now, the Ford Capri. And Ford says that they decided to launch this car here because they wanted a place where we could get into some mischief, because this is a fun car. They created it to be fun. Well, we're gonna talk about that later on. It was quite interesting to see Eric Cantona do the introductions last night. He also did a review with this car. It was quite funny. But let's talk about the car itself. So as the name points out, it is a successor, a modern day interpretation of the legendary car that was launched at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. It was back then considered to be the European Mustang, if you will. It was a very sporty model that was aimed at the family man. So one of its selling points was that even though it was quite fast and enjoyable to drive, it also had enough room inside for a man and his family, of course. So they wanted to keep the spirit of the original intact, but they have to adapt to the modern day cars. So what's selling today? SUVs, crossovers, especially in the C or D segment. And since this is a car aimed at the future, downright obvious that it had to be an electric model. So if you want to think about the Capri and transport it into 2024, if you take into consideration everything that's happening in the market, the shape of this car couldn't have been any different. So we're talking about a crossover with some styling cues from the original. Up front, you'll notice that the headlamps have 4 LEDs in them, working as DRL or daytime running lights, and they are a throwback to the original Capri and its headlamps. The shape of the headlamp is quite similar to the original, and we also have a reinterpretation of the traditional Ford grille up front that's replicating the one we saw on the Capri back then. So it does look pretty good up front. The same goes for the back. We have 4 LED lighting elements in the back, and we have the Capri name hidden behind glass protector, and everything is quite 3D. So yeah, I approve this sort of design, and I can actually see some of the original Capri into the design of this car. Also, from the sides, you will notice the C-pillar has a very rounded off shape, and the fact that all cars come with black A-pillars, and that turns the entire side of the car into a sort of visor, and it does look a lot like the original. The roof, for example, is very straight and very flat. It only drops to the back in a coupe fashion after where the heads of the rear passengers would be. So even though you have an SUV with a coupe-like shape, it doesn't look weird, and I actually like the way it shapes up. In terms of size, it's a quite a big car, over 4.6 meters in length. The wheelbase is over 2.7 meters, and it's bigger than it seems in the pictures, and it's bigger than you would imagine considering the name this car is boasting on its rear end. But overall, I think it has nice proportions, and I think it looks pretty good. Inside, there's plenty of room. As you can probably tell from the shots I'm inserting into this video. And we have the interior very similar to what we've seen on the Explorer before. We have a huge 14.6-inch screen over here for the multimedia system. It's Sync 4. So I like the way the whole dashboard wraps around you with the door cards and everything. What I would have changed is the quality of some materials. For example, the dashboard has really hard touch plastics on the top, but you don't really have any contact with them. On the door cards, you have soft touch plastics, which is pretty good. And I think the only complaint I have is the top of the dashboard in terms of build quality. Of course, like a lot of other manufacturers are doing these days to try and cut some costs, the rear door cards do have worse plastic on them. If that's a problem for you, probably you shouldn't buy a number of cars launched on the market these days. I want to praise the seats. They look and feel incredible. They are incredibly comfortable. The headrest is integrated into the backrest. I have no complaint whatsoever in this regard. Very, very comfortable. The one thing I don't really understand is why the driver is getting all the attention, because this seat, my seat, the driver's seat, has electrically adjustable in all the directions. It has a massaging function, it's heated, it's a memory seat. But on the other hand, the passenger seat is manually adjustable, doesn't have a massaging function, and it seems like nobody cares about the passengers. I care about the passengers, Ford. Please do something about the passenger seat. Luckily, it's quite comfortable as well. There's plenty of room in the back, even for 4 adults my size. Well, not 4 adults in the back, 4 adults in total in the car. So with the driver's seat adjusted in my comfortable driving position, if I'm sitting in the back, I have plenty of room, including headroom. So no issues whatsoever. The boot has 572 liters in total, and it's quite big. To give you a better idea how big it is, think about it this way. The BMW 5 Series, the current 5 Series Touring, has 570 liters of space in the back. So plenty of space. We don't have a frunk, but I don't think that's an issue. And let's talk about the technical side of things. As you probably already figured out, this car uses the same platform as the Volkswagen models these days. So it uses the MEB platform underneath it all. It's an older collaboration done between Ford and Volkswagen. And Ford told us last night that even though they are using the Volkswagen platform, just a second to get out of this roundabout. Even though they are using a Volkswagen platform, they made sure to do some tweaks to it, and they are using the second generation MEB, if you will, which has a different composition for the battery packs, a different layout, different electric motors, as opposed to the original MEB platform. So everything has been improved with some help from Ford, and the setup has been done by Ford to make this car feel like a Ford, not a Volkswagen. To be more precise, you get 3 engine choices or motor choices because they are electric. So there's one coming, it's not yet available. It's an entry level, if you will, 170 horsepower rear axle motor with a 52 kilowatt hour battery. That will be mainly aimed at people who are going to use this car exclusively around town. Then there are 2 more choices in the range. There's a rear wheel drive 286 horsepower, 545 Newton meters of torque version with a 77 kilowatt hour battery. And then there's this one we're driving, the top of the range model with 340 horsepower, all-wheel drive. So on top of that 286 horsepower engine on the rear axle, you have another one on the front axle and a bigger battery, 79 kilowatt hours, usable 84 in total. The version we're driving can do 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 5.3 seconds and has a top speed of 180 kilometers an hour. I have to praise its suspension, incredibly comfortable, very quiet, very refined, very demure. Very well done by Ford. You don't get adaptive suspension in any model, but as far as I can tell, you don't really need it because this car has a very balanced setup in between comfort and sportiness. I drove it in a sportier fashion earlier and it didn't really disappoint. You do feel its weight, it's about 2.2 tons empty, but you feel it really deep, really down low. So that means it will push you towards the outside of a bend, but it's very controllable, very manageable. You don't have a lot of feedback in the steering wheel, but that's okay. You don't really expect that in an electric car. So this version should have a better performance when it comes to charging, because the 79 kilowatt hour battery can take up to 185 kilowatts of power whenever charging, whereas the 77 kilowatt hour battery can only do 135. But it's the charging curve that interests you the most, and I tested the Explorer earlier this year, and I noticed that its charging curve is quite impressive. So even though it only has a peak of 135 kilowatts, it can keep it up to close to 135 for a long period of time. So that means shorter charging times. But that's only going to matter when you're going out for a longer drive. Around town, you won't even notice the charging time, because most of the time you'll probably charge it at home or using a slow charger because it's cheaper. So and the car sits in the garage or maybe at work in a parking lot for an extended period of time, so you won't have an issue in that regard. I also appreciate just how quiet it is whenever you're driving it. We're on the highway right now. I'm doing close to 100 kilometers an hour, and the car is incredibly quiet. And that's because the drag coefficient of it is 0.27, and it is the most efficient crossover Ford has ever done. So yeah, that helps out both in terms of refinement and quietness inside the cabin, but also in terms of energy efficiency. They say this car should have a range of about 560 kilometers with an average energy consumption of 15.8. We are doing right now, well, the car shows an average energy consumption of 9 kilowatt hours, but that's because we've been driving downhill. That's not exactly a realistic figure, but earlier I saw an average of about 16 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered while climbing. So I think it's pretty close to the official figures, but mind you, we have the perfect weather outside. It's just 20 degrees Celsius. That's why manufacturers choose to launch their cars in the south of France. So overall, I do enjoy this car. I think they did a pretty good job at it. I don't know if it's going to be a popular product. I think it has everything it needs, but at the end of the day, it's still an electric car, and I know a lot of people have a lot of prejudice towards it. Even more people will definitely have some prejudice against it because it uses the Capri name, and it's no longer a coupe, a small sports car. But we have to be realistic here. This is what sells today, and you know, the sports car segment is absolutely dying. Everybody wants a crossover. Let's talk about its main strengths, right? So it's incredibly comfortable, very refined, quiet inside, spacious. On the downside, it still uses a 400 volt platform. That's not exactly something that should make you not buy it, because for most day-to-day situations, this platform will be enough. But if you wanted to have a future-proof car, you probably would have liked to look at an 800 volt platform. I'm not a big fan of the navigation system, but at the end of the day, you do have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay that can be mirrored on this huge screen, so you don't really have to use the onboard navigation, which definitely could have been better. I don't like the ergonomics of the car, the fact that we have touch sensitive buttons on the steering wheel. If I want to operate the rear windows, I have to press on a button and so on. You know, all the BS Volkswagen has gotten us used to. There is some, let's be honest, there's a lot of glossy black plastic inside the car, which will attract a lot of fingerprints and a lot of dust. But okay, that's probably subjective, but I think it's a very interesting choice. We do have to talk about pricing and its rivals though. So in the segment, the main rival this car has to compete with is definitely the Tesla Model Y, which has a similar price. It's a bit more expensive than this one. Then we're talking about all the MEB platform models like the Skoda Enyaq, the Volkswagen ID4, and so on. ID5 would be a closer rival to this car because it is a coupe. The same goes for the Enyaq. So every single model in this segment, and there are a lot of them, Toyota BZ4X, and there's a number of them. Pricing will be around 40,000 euros starting. In Romania, where we're going to have this car for testing purposes, it starts at 42,000 euros for the rear-wheel drive version. The all-wheel drive version is about 2,000 euros more expensive. So that said, I am rather curious to see your thoughts on the new Ford Capri. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below, and until next time, of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.